Hello again, and this time we're going to have this mini lecture on uh, what is an appropriate bargaining unit. So, first and foremost, no, why do we need to determine the appropriateness of a bargaining unit, and what is a bargaining unit? So, a bargaining unit is a group of employees of a given employer comprised of all or less than all of the entire body of employees, which the collective interests of all the employees, consistent with equity to the employer, indicate to be the best suited to serve the reciprocal rights and duties of the parties under the collective bargaining provisions of the law. Okay, so from that long definition, no, which neither defines or explains what a bargaining unit is. So, what are the key terms that you must remember? First and foremost, that uh, we need to determine first the existence of employer-employee relationship. And once we find that all of these people, no, in that establishment are indeed the employees of that particular employer, so that's one down. Meron na tayo na solve na isa. And then second is, then we test the suitability. Dapat ba silang magkakasama in this particular grouping? Okay. So, let me illustrate this, no? When we say appropriate bargaining unit, we're talking about the entirety of the organization's employees. So, we need to weed out yung mga hindi kasama. So, for instance, we have 1,000, no? People in the organization. So, all of them are employees. Na-determine natin may employer-employee relationship. However, do they now form part of the bargaining unit for that matter? No. Ba? Kasi, tanggalin muna natin. Managerial employees, hindi pwedeng mag-unionize. Diba? So, minus natin sila. Confidential employees, hindi makasama. Okay? So, minus na naman sila. So, from 1,000, let's say, minus na natin another 100 and then another 100. So, we only have 800 people left, 800 workers left. Then, we have supervisory employees. So, i-minus mo na naman, let's say 100, no? Padaliin natin yung math kasi hindi natin gusto yung mathematics. Okay. So, tanggalin na natin 100. Now, again, supervisory employees may unionize, but the problem is, no, hindi sila pwedeng sumama sa rank and file. So, i-weed out muna natin sila. They can form their own. So, separate na agad sila. So, we only have 700 remaining. Okay. But with the 700 rank and file from that 1,000 employees, in that given establishment, sila na ba yung lahat? Okay? Meaning, appropriate bargaining unit na ba? Meron tayong gagamitin to determine the appropriateness of that bargaining unit. When we say appropriate bargaining unit, it must affect a grouping of employees who have substantial mutual interest in wages, hours, working conditions, and other subjects of collective bargaining. So from this definition, in the San Miguel Corporation Supervisors and Exam Employees Union versus Laguesma, we can already see the emphasis where on mutuality of interest. Okay? And that's why in our jurisdiction, we use the substantial mutual interest rules or communality of interest. Initin natin, pare-pareho ba tayo ng gusto na mangyari? Gusto ba natin to? Ito ba agenda natin? Di ba? Kasi mahirap nating i-push, no? When we want to bargain for better terms and conditions of employment if we do not agree on what we want our employers to do for us or the concessions that we want our employer to give us. So, kasi diba, bottom line ng lahat ng ito, bakit tayo nag-unionize, as I mentioned in my last lecture, is for us to have strength in numbers when we collectively negotiate, no, or bargain with our employer. So, mahirap pag sila sa labid, kapag yung isang gusto, sweldo above all else, dagdagan, di ba? Or isa, HMO, I need a HMO. Or another group would want shorter working hours, di ba? Kasi traffic, kailangan, pauwiin na tayo, 3 p.m. pa lang. So, they don't care about other things. So, you need to determine their mutual interest. Okay, now, what else can we use to determine the appropriateness of the bargaining unit? So it's not just substantial mutual interest, but we can also look into the will of the employees. Meaning, if they want to be bound together, to be grouped together, then that may also be ground, no, for allowing or thinking or deciding that that is an appropriate bargaining unit. Then we also have prior collective bargaining history, which means that dati ba magkakasama sila, di ba? Kahit na yung isa sa accounting department or administrative department, then the other one belongs to, let's say, the manufacturing department. So medyo magkaiba yung kanilang interest, yung isa may shifting, yung isa wala. Pero if no, in prior collective bargaining negotiations, they were already grouped together, then yes, it may be considered as an appropriate bargaining unit. And then we have similarity of employment status. It may also be a basis. So let's say you can choose to be in one bargaining unit if all of you are project employees, or those who are, let's say, term employees, pwede rin sila. And then it will also be considered as an appropriate bargaining unit. Okay? But again, as I have mentioned earlier, in our jurisdiction, what we use generally is the community or mutuality of interest rule. Okay? So we look at where? We look at what the worker actually does and what their interests lie in. Okay, so that's how we determine whether a particular worker, no, belongs in the appropriate bargaining unit. But then again, remember that when we talk about bargaining units, ano yung gusto natin marating? Saan papunta tayo? Papunta tayo sa proseso ng certification election, di ba? Once we have determined that these workers belong to the appropriate bargaining unit, no, then we can now have the certification election, which is the process of determining the sole and exclusive bargaining agent of the employees in that particular bargaining unit. Okay, for eventually purposes of collective bargaining. Okay, so that ends my mini lecture on what is an appropriate bargaining unit, and then we will move on, of course, later on to what? To certification election. Thank you.